Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of sources today: news reports, NTSB documents, historical accounts, all focused on aviation incidents right here in San Diego.
That's right. It's quite a mix. We have the immediate aftermath of a very recent crash, just days old, but also, deep dives from investigations decades ago.
All happening in the same general area, though.
Exactly. Different times, different planes, but the same airspace, often the same airports involved. It lets us look at safety from, well, different angles.
So our goal today is to really unpack these incidents, understand what happened in each case based on these sources, and see what broader insights emerge about aviation safety, especially focusing here.
Yeah, looking at how different factors, mechanical, human, environmental, interact, it's complex.
Okay, let's jump right in. The most recent event, the sources cover the Cessna Citation crash from May 22nd, 2025. Just happened.
Yes, a 1985 Cessna Citation II, that's a business jet, registration N6660S, piloted by its owner, Dave Shapiro.
And the flight path.
It started in Peterborough, New Jersey, flew to Wichita for fuel, and then was on its final leg to Montgomery-Gibbs Executive Airport right here in San Diego.
Tragically, 6 people on board didn't survive. The pilot, Dave Shapiro, co-founder of Sound Talent Group.
Right, and also Sound Talent employees Emma Huke and Kendall Fortner, photographer Selena Kenyon, a friend Dominic Damian.
And Daniel Williams, the former drummer from The Devil Wears Prada. Some reports mentioned he'd posted on Instagram just before the flight. So sad.
Just awful. The flight was due in about 3:47 a.m. Pacific time. The pilot made a standard radio call and final approach about 3 miles out. Everything seemed normal on the radio at that point.
But then things went terribly wrong. The sources describe the sequence.
Yeah, it seems the aircraft hit power lines first, about 2 miles southeast of the runway. They found fragments there.
Then it clipped a house in Tierra Santa.
Clipped a house, yes, before crashing into the Murphy Canyon neighborhood. This was around 3:45 a.m., just minutes before it was supposed to land.
And the impact on the ground. Devastating. Military housing area.
That's right. 10 homes damaged, 1 destroyed completely, 6 vehicles too, and at least 8 people on the ground were injured.
Plus the jet fuel, the fires. Took hours to control.
A terrible scene.
Now the weather. That seems crucial here. Sources say foggy, visibility really low.
Very low. Half a statute mile reported at area airports. An aviation attorney in one source pointed out that likely means they were flying under IFR, instrument flight rules.
Which makes sense. But then you get into the airport issues.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it gets complicated.
Right. So for the specific instrument approach the pilot was using, the minimum required visibility was actually 3/4 of a mile.
Higher than the reported half mile.
Exactly. And on top of that, the weather system at Montgomery Field, the ASUS, which gives pilots automated updates, it was down. Out of service due to a power surge.
Okay, so the weather's bad, below minimums,
Right.
and the system telling the pilot how bad isn't working.
And wait, there's more? The approach lights for that specific runway, they hadn't been working since October, confirmed by a NOTAM, that's a notice to airmen.
Wow. So bad weather, below minimums, no automated weather updates, and no approach lights to help him see the runway at the last second. That's a lot.
It's a huge number of challenges stacking up. The sources say the pilot did try to activate the lights remotely with his radio, clicking the microphone, which is how pilot-controlled lighting works.
But they didn't come on.
They didn't come on. And crucially, the pilot never declared an emergency or reported any problems to ATC.
Just kept going. There was that final radio transmission mentioned.
Yeah, all right. Doesn't sound great, but we'll give it a go. Chilling, really, knowing what happened next.
Absolutely. So where does the investigation stand now?
Well, the NTSB and FAA are deep into it. The NTSB sent a GO team, 8 investigators plus reps from Cessna and the engine maker. They're recovering wreckage, looking for recorders.
Did it have recorders?
The reports say it wasn't equipped with a flight data recorder, the black box that tracks the plane's parameters. They're still trying to determine if it had a cockpit voice recorder and if it's recoverable.
So answers will take time.
Oh, definitely. A preliminary report might come relatively soon, but the full probable cause finding, that usually takes a year, maybe 2.
Such a complex situation. Okay, let's shift gears completely now. Let's go back in time to another major San Diego incident, one that really changed things. PSA Flight 182, September 25th, 1978.
A truly landmark accident, horrific. At the time, it was the deadliest crash in U.S. history. Still the deadliest in California.
A mid-air collision. A PSA Boeing 727 airliner and a small private plane, a Cessna 172.
That's right. Over San Diego, the scale of the loss was just immense. 144 people died.
Everyone on the 727, that was 135 people.
Both pilots in the Cessna, and 7 people on the ground where the wreckage hit, 9 more injured on the ground.
And the impact was in North Park, right? Widespread damage.
Yeah, the 727 hit near Dwight and Nile Streets, the Cessna about 6 blocks away near 32nd and Polk, took out or damaged 22 homes.
Now, unlike the 2025 crash, the weather here was perfect.
Totally different scenario. Sunny, clear skies, 10 miles visibility. This wasn't about not being able to see because of weather.
So what was it about? The investigation focused on ATC, human factors.
Very much so. Air traffic control procedures and, well, what the pilots were doing or not doing. ATC had alerted the PSA crew about the Cessna nearby.
And the cockpit voice recorder from the 727 showed.
It showed. The PSA pilots initially said they saw the Cessna, got him in sight. But then later conversations indicate they'd lost sight of it. They were speculating where it might be.
But they didn't tell ATC they'd lost sight.
Critically, no. They didn't explicitly update ATC that visual contact was lost.
In the Cessna. What was its situation?
It took off from Montgomery Field, same airport as the recent crash involved. It was flying visually, VFR, but the pilots were practicing instrument approaches. There were 2 licensed pilots aboard. One was wearing a hood, a device to block outside vision to simulate flying only by instrument.
And it deviated from its course.
Yes, the NTSB found it turned from its assigned heading of 070 degrees to 090 degrees without notifying ATC.
So, multiple failures in communication and procedure. What did the NTSB conclude?
The probable cause finding pointed primarily at the PSA flight crew's failure to follow procedures, specifically maintaining visual separation from the traffic ATC had pointed out.
But there were contributing factors.
Yes, including ATC errors. They were using visual separation procedures when radar-based separation, vectoring, was technically available. And the Cessna's deviation was also listed as contributing.
I remember reading there was some disagreement on that finding, a dissent.
There was. A strong dissenting opinion argued that the Cessna's unauthorized turn and the ATC procedural issues should have been considered primary causes, not just contributing factors. It highlights how complex assigning cause can be. Later, the NTSB actually amended the findings slightly, giving more weight to those other factors.
Interesting. The report also mentioned conversation in the PSA cockpit.
Yeah, non-essential conversation during a critical phase of flight descent and approach. The NTSB didn't say it caused the crash, but they pointed it out as a safety concern, cockpit discipline being crucial during busy times.
They also looked at whether the Cessna was hard to see.
Right. They did. Maybe its yellow color blended with the houses below. Maybe foreshortening made it look smaller or further away. But ultimately, a visibility study concluded that, the Cessna should have been visible to the 727 crew for quite a while before impact.
So just a tragic convergence of factors. Communication breakdowns, procedural issues, maybe attention lapses.
A perfect storm, as you said earlier, but a very different kind. And the aftermath was significant for safety.
Big changes came from this, right?
Huge changes. Renewed debate about the airport's location, sure. But more practically, it drove major reforms in air traffic control. San Diego got a terminal radar service area, or TRSA, and later the much stricter Class B airspace we have today.
What does Class B mean practically?
It means all aircraft, big or small, need a specific clearance from ATC and are under positive radar control within that airspace. No just flying through visually without talking to anyone. It's designed precisely to prevent conflicts like the one that happened in '78.
And it spurred technology, too.
Yeah.
TCAS.
Absolutely. It was a major impetus for developing and mandating TCS traffic collision alert and avoidance systems on airliners. That system actively warns pilots about nearby aircraft and can even command evasive maneuvers, though typically not required on small Cessnas.
Still used in training today, I bet.
Oh, yeah. A classic case study in human factors, CRM, crew resource management, and airspace rules.
A terrible catalyst for change. Okay, let's look at the third incident from the sources. A different aircraft type, again, a helicopter crash in 1996.
All right, April 23rd, 1996. A Hughes 269C helicopter. It crashed in a residential area here in San Diego.
It was a rental. Where was it going?
Rented from Civic Helicopters. It had departed Montgomery Field, heading for Carlsbad. But at the time of the crash, it was doing an aerial video shoot near a local hospital.
Witnesses saw it, orbiting. Low and slow.
That's what they reported. Orbiting the hospital, low altitude, slow airspeed. Then they heard the engine sputter. The helicopter yawed sharply left, then descended uncontrollably, spinning right, and hit a fence between 2 houses. Damaged homes, vehicles.
And the occupants.
The pilot, who held a commercial certificate, was fatally injured. A passenger was seriously injured.
So the NTSB investigated. What did they find here? Multiple factors again.
Yes, several things came together. First, the engine.
What about it?
Examination found 2 exhaust valves were stuck open, caused by combustion deposit buildup.
Was that a known issue?
Sort of. The NTSB report noted there was a recommended maintenance procedure non-mandatory, but recommended specifically to prevent that kind of valve sticking. The operator hadn't performed it.
Ah, recommended fix, not taken. Okay, what else? Human factors, the pilot.
Toxicology found metabolites of a prescription sleep medication, Dalmane. Also, substances from over-the-counter cold meds.
Things the FAA warns about.
Definitely. The FAA is clear that substances like these can impair performance in activities needing alertness, like flying. So, potential impairment was a factor considered.
Okay, engine maintenance, potential pilot impairment, anything else? Equipment.
A big one was the pilot's shoulder harness. It failed. Broke right at a worn spot where it went over the seat.
Failed. Why?
Well, the investigation found it wasn't standard equipment. It didn't have the required data tags, so they couldn't even tell who made it. The webbing was narrower. The stitching didn't match the original manufacturer's specs.
A non-standard worn-out harness was installed.
Apparently. And critically required inspections, annual 100-hour, 50-hour, had all missed these discrepancies. The passenger's harness, thankfully, did not fail.
So a failure in the inspection process, too, letting faulty equipment stay in service.
Exactly. And one more key point. The pilot's operating conditions.
Low and slow, like the witnesses said.
Yes. The NTSB found the pilot was operating inside a hazardous area of the height velocity diagram, or dead man's curve, for that helicopter. It's a zone of low altitude and low airspeed, where if you lose engine power, you might not have enough altitude or forward speed to auto-rotate safely, leading to an uncontrollable descent.
So flying in a known danger zone for that aircraft.
Correct. And one specific NTSB finding was rotor RPM not maintained pilot in command, meaning the pilot didn't keep the rotor speed up, which is absolutely critical for control, especially if the engine falters.
Wow. So potential engine trouble due to deferred recommended maintenance, possible pilot impairment, faulty non-standard equipment missed by inspectors, and operating the aircraft outside its safe flight envelope. Again, multiple layers.
It's almost always a chain of events, isn't it? Rarely just one single cause.
Okay, so we've looked at these 3 distinct San Diego incidents. A 2025 business jet crash, the 1978 airliner Cessna collision, the 1996 helicopter crash. What connects them? Besides geography, what themes stand out when you look at them together?
Well, the geography is key, all tied into the busy airspace around San Diego's airports, Montgomery Field featuring prominently. But beyond that, they really showcase the whole spectrum of accident factors.
You see mechanical issues. The helicopter valve may be something yet to be found in the citation.
Right. You see environmental factors like the fog and visibility in the 2025 crash.
And human factors seen woven through all of them. Pilot decisions, communication, ATC actions, maintenance choices.
Absolutely. The decision to attempt the approach in 2025 despite the conditions and outages, the communication breakdown and visual separation issues in 1978, the potential impairment, operating limits, and maintenance choices in the 1996 crash, it's all there.
Plus the systemic side, things like airport infrastructure reliability, ADC procedures, airspace design, inspection protocols.
Exactly. These cases vividly illustrate that aviation safety depends on many layers working together. An accident usually means several of those layers failed or were bypassed somehow.
Like the weather, lights, and ASOS issues coinciding with the pilot's decision in 2025.
Or the mix of pilot communication, ATC procedures, and the Cessna's deviation in 1978.
And the maintenance, pilot condition, operating choices, and equipment inspection failures in 1996.
It shows how interdependent everything is.
And it also shows how safety evolves, right? PSA 182 directly led to things like Class B airspace and pushed TCS forward. Safety systems learn, often from tragedy.
It's a dynamic process, constantly adapting based on these hard lessons. But the fundamental challenge remains managing the complex interaction between machines, people, and the environment.
This has been a really sobering look at these incidents. It really drives home what the NTSB always emphasizes. Investigations are about finding out what happened and why to prevent it from happening again, not about assigning legal blame.
Precisely. Every investigation adds to the knowledge base that hopefully makes the next flight safer.
So when you look across these different eras, different aircraft, different causes here in San Diego, you see these recurring themes. Systems, human performance, technology, environment, all interacting. What does that pattern tell us about the I guess, the persistent challenges of keeping something so complex as aviation safe. How much does it ultimately come down to just vigilance? Adherence to the rules at every level.
I think it tells us that while technology and procedures provide the framework, the system's integrity really relies on the people within it. From maintenance crews to controllers to pilots, everyone needs to execute their role correctly, follow procedures, communicate clearly, and yes, remain vigilant. It's a deeply human system supporting a technical one.
It really makes you appreciate all the layers of safety that have to work perfectly every single time we fly, doesn't it? Things we'd probably just take for granted.